The explosion tore through the Proxima Centauri research station like a vengeful god, consuming everything in its path. Alarms screamed their final desperate warnings as containment protocols failed, and the station's sterile white corridors turned into a hellscape of twisting metal and superheated plasma. Dr. Elena Rodriguez should have died. She remembered the moment with crystalline clarity. The experimental quantum resonance chamber had gone critical, releasing a cascade of radiation that should have stripped the flesh from her bones in milliseconds. The last thing she recalled was the blinding white light, the searing heat, and then nothing. When the emergency response team finally breached the sealed laboratory 3 days later, they expected to find nothing but ash and molecular fragments. Instead, they found Elena Rodriguez sitting calmly amid the destruction, her skin unmarked, her eyes clear and sharp. "The readings are impossible," muttered Dr. Marcus Reyes, the lead investigator, as he reviewed the initial scan results. Radiation levels that should have been fatal hundreds of times over showed no effect on the subject. Her cellular structure appeared not just intact, but somehow enhanced. Elena knew something had changed. During those first moments of examination, she could feel it. A subtle vibration beneath her skin, a sense of potential coiled and waiting. Her body felt different, stronger, more alive. The initial medical reports were classified within hours. Black-budget government agencies descended on the research facility like a swarm of steel-eyed vultures. Blood tests, genetic scans, cellular analysis. Each test revealed something more extraordinary than the last. What they discovered was a genetic mechanism unlike anything in human or alien scientific understanding. Buried deep within human DNA were complex genetic sequences that had remained dormant for millennia. The radiation event hadn't destroyed Elena. It had triggered something, a failsafe, an evolutionary reset button that no one knew existed. "It's like our DNA is a computer," Elena explained to the classified review board 2 weeks later, with most of its programming deliberately locked away. "Something in that explosion didn't just damage my cells. It unlocked a new set of instructions." The military saw potential. The scientists saw a breakthrough. But Elena saw something more, a glimpse of humanity's true potential. Genetic markers showed unprecedented adaptive capabilities, cellular regeneration that made previous medical technology look like primitive guesswork, neural pathways that could reconfigure themselves in response to environmental stress. It wasn't just healing. It was evolution in real time. Deep in a secure facility beneath the Atacama Desert, a team of the world's most brilliant researchers began to unravel the mystery. They worked in shifts, analyzing every microscopic detail of Elena's transformed genetic structure. Each discovery was more shocking than the last. Her immune system had rewritten itself. Damaged DNA repaired instantaneously. Cellular mitochondria showed signs of enhanced energy production that defied current scientific understanding. It was as if human biology had been running at a fraction of its true potential, and now something had awakened. Elena understood the implications before anyone else. This wasn't just a medical miracle. This was a fundamental transformation of what it meant to be human. "We've been looking at our genetic code like a static document," she told Dr. Reyes during one late-night discussion. "But what if it's more like a living program? What if we can actually reprogram ourselves in real time?" Outside the research facility, the galaxy continued its indifferent spin. Alien civilizations went about their business, completely unaware that on a small, seemingly insignificant planet, something extraordinary was brewing. Humanity was about to change, and nothing would ever be the same. The spark had been lit, and soon it would become a fire that would burn across the stars. The Zarkon ships dropped out of hyperspace like obsidian daggers piercing the fabric of reality. Massive carrier vessels, each large enough to swallow entire cities, cast planet-killing shadows across Earth's orbital defense grid. Their arrival was silent, precise, and utterly devastating. Lieutenant Sarah Nakamura gripped the controls of her experimental F-742 Stormhawk fighter, her neural interface humming with an energy that felt almost alive. Standard military projections gave humanity less than 72 hours before total annihilation. But Sarah wasn't interested in standard projections. Nighthawk Squadron, this is Control. The communication channel crackled. Defensive Formation Alpha 9. Do not. I repeat, do not engage primary targets. Sarah's lips curved into a cold smile. Military protocols were a relic. The experimental adaptive interface grafted into her spinal column told a different story. The first wave of Zarkon plasma cannons lit up the darkness of space, each shot capable of vaporizing conventional human vessels instantly. But Sarah's fighter was anything but conventional. As the first energy signature locked onto her craft, something extraordinary happened. Microscopic mechanical components within the fighter's hull began to shift. Nanomaterial adaptive plates reconfigured themselves, molecular structures realigning in milliseconds. Where other pilots would have been reduced to plasma and scattered atoms, Sarah's ship began to change. Energy dispersal patterns recalibrated. Structural integrity fields pulsed with an intelligence that seemed to breathe. The Stormhawk didn't just defend, it learned. What the hell? Sarah's weapons officer, Lieutenant Miguel Rodriguez, watched in disbelief as their fighter not only survived the initial barrage, but seemed to absorb the alien weapon's energy. Those shots should have. Another plasma burst. This time, the ship's hull didn't just deflect the energy. It captured it, transforming the destructive force into additional power for the craft's experimental quantum drive. The Zarkon communication networks erupted in their complex linguistic patterns, something between a mathematical equation and a living language. Their tactical algorithms couldn't process what was happening. A human vessel was adapting faster than their most advanced predictive systems could calculate. Admiral Krelax of the Zarkon Imperium watched the initial engagement from the bridge of the planet-killer vessel Voidrender. His 6 crystalline eyes narrowed, processing data streams that showed something unprecedented. Impossible. He clicked in the sharp, percussive language of his species. The humans were supposed to be primitive, technologically infantile, a species barely worthy of classification, let alone resistance. But the data didn't lie. The human fighter was changing, learning, evolving in real time. Sarah's neural interface burned with an intensity that felt like liquid fire coursing through her nervous system. She could feel the ship, not just control it, become one with it. Tactical information flooded her consciousness. Alien weapon signatures, structural weak points in the approaching Zarkon vessels. Miguel, she said quietly, target the quantum coupling junction on the lead carrier's starboard side. Rodriguez's hands flew across the weapon controls. That's impossible. Those junctions err. Just do it. The shot was perfect. Not just accurate, but impossibly precise. The massive Zarkon carrier shuddered, its primary quantum drive destabilizing. Billions of credits of alien technology reduced to floating debris in seconds. On Earth, in underground command centers and classified research facilities, scientists and military strategists watched in a mixture of terror and hope. Dr. Elena Rodriguez's genetic research was proving itself in the most extreme testing ground imaginable. The human fighters weren't just surviving. They were proving that adaptation wasn't just a biological process. It was a fundamental force of nature. As the first hour of the invasion concluded, the Zarkon had lost 3 capital ships. Humanity had lost 0 fighters. Something fundamental had changed, and the galaxy was about to learn exactly what humanity was capable of. The first blood had been drawn, and it was human. The underground facility beneath the Atacama Desert was a cathedral of human potential and human suffering. 50 volunteer soldiers lay in specialized containment units, their bodies undergoing a transformation that pushed the boundaries of what anyone thought possible. The genetic integration process was brutal, unforgiving. Some would die. Others would become something entirely new. Dr. Elena Rodriguez watched the monitors, her hands pressed against the reinforced glass. Each soldier represented a quantum leap in human evolution, if they survived. Private Marcus Chen was the first to show significant changes. His muscles began to restructure themselves, muscle fibers interweaving with synthetic protein-based nanomaterials. Where normal human tissue would tear, his adapted. Where conventional biology would fail, he transformed. Cortisol levels stabilizing, muttered Dr. Hiroshi Tanaka, checking the readouts. Muscular skeletal density increasing by 372% in the last 6 minutes. Another soldier, Lieutenant Isham Beek, experienced something different. Her neural pathways began to reconfigure, creating synaptic connections that looked more like advanced quantum computing networks than traditional brain matter. Information processing speeds that would have been impossible moments before became her new normal. The pain was indescribable. But the volunteers knew what was at stake. An alien invasion that had already decimated half of humanity's orbital defenses, a species facing potential extinction. And now, their last hope rested in this genetic crucible. Subject 17 is crashing, a technician shouted. Marcus Chen watched in horror as the soldier's body began to break down at the cellular level. Some adaptations were too extreme. The human body could only transform so much. But for every failure, there was a breakthrough. Private Elena Rodriguez, no relation to the lead researcher, began to demonstrate capabilities that defied medical understanding. Her immune system didn't just fight infection, it learned from it. Alien viral structures that would have killed a normal human were now being systematically decoded, understood, and neutralized. It's like watching evolution happen in real time, Dr. Tanaka whispered. The military saw weapons. The scientists saw a breakthrough. But Elena Rodriguez saw something more, a fundamental reimagining of human potential. Muscle groups that could instantly adapt to extreme environments. Healing capabilities that made traditional medicine look like primitive guesswork. Neural pathways that could process alien technologies faster than any computer. 50 soldiers entered the program. 23 would survive, and they would change everything. Outside, the Zarkon invasion continued, but humanity was no longer just defending. They were preparing to fight back. In the heart of the Atacama facility, a new kind of soldier was being born. Not just enhanced, not just modified, evolved. The Battle of Sigma 9 was never supposed to be a victory. A single human strike team of 20 genetically enhanced soldiers stood against an entire Zarkon command ship, a vessel large enough to consume entire planetary colonies. Their mission: infiltration and strategic disruption. Captain Jacob Rodriguez moved like liquid metal, his augmented body a perfect fusion of human determination and adaptive technology. The neural interface grafted into his nervous system wasn't just a weapon. It was a living, thinking extension of his consciousness. As they breached the alien vessel's outer hull, the ship itself began to respond. Walls shifted, defensive systems recalibrated, but something unprecedented was happening. The human soldiers weren't just fighting. They were communicating with the ship's technological infrastructure. Private Chen's enhanced neural pathways began to decode the Zarkon's complex quantum communication protocols. What should have taken years of study was happening in milliseconds. Alien defensive systems that had repelled thousands of species suddenly found themselves being rewritten from within. "We're not just hacking," Chen muttered into his communication link. "We're translating. Weapons that learned, armor that healed, soldiers who could interface directly with enemy systems, turning the Zarkon's own technologies against them." It wasn't just warfare. It was a living, breathing evolution of combat itself. Lieutenant Isham Beek's adaptive combat suit wasn't just protection. It was a symbiotic organism that responded to her biological signals faster than thought. When plasma bolts struck her position, the suit's molecular structure would instantly reconfigure, dispersing energy and protecting her with an intelligence that seemed almost sentient. The Zarkon defenders found themselves facing an impossible enemy. Human soldiers who could predict attack vectors before they were launched. Weapons that adapted to alien energy signatures in real time. a strike team that moved less like a military unit and more like a single intelligent organism. "This is impossible," the Zarkon commander clicked in their complex language, watching tactical displays that made no sense. Human soldiers were rewriting the very rules of engagement. By the mission's end, the massive Zarkon command ship, a technological marvel that had subjugated hundreds of species, was reduced to floating debris. The human strike team suffered 0 casualties. It wasn't just a victory, it was a demonstration. Humanity was no longer just a technological species. They had become something more, a living, adaptive system that could transform faster than any enemy could comprehend. The galaxy was about to change, and nothing would ever be the same. The Zarkon interrogation chamber was designed to break any known sentient species: quantum pain inducers, psychological resonance fields, neurological disruptors that could shatter the minds of even the most disciplined warriors. They had never encountered a human. Sergeant Michael Torres sat strapped to the alien extraction unit, surrounded by technologies that could reduce most species to quivering, information-spilling remnants of themselves. The Zarkon interrogators, 6-limbed creatures with crystalline neural processors, expected total capitulation within minutes. 12 hours later, they were the ones coming apart. What the aliens didn't understand was that human psychological resilience wasn't just a trait, it was an evolutionary weapon. Torres wasn't just resisting. He was analyzing. Every quantum pulse designed to break his mental defenses became another piece of data his enhanced neural pathways could process and understand. The pain inducers that should have reduced him to a mindless husk were instead being systematically decoded, their fundamental operating principles mapped and categorized. "Fascinating," Torres muttered, even as quantum energy coursed through his nervous system. "Your pain resonance operates on a 3.7 terahertz frequency." Interesting choice. The lead interrogator, a creature named Krelvax, found its multiprocessor brain struggling to comprehend. Humans were supposed to be primitive, easily manipulated. Yet this single specimen was turning the most advanced interrogation technology in the galaxy into a learning experiment. Worse, Torres was beginning to talk back. "Your communication protocols suggest a hierarchical society with significant internal stress," he observed clinically. "The resonance patterns in your linguistic structures indicate multiple subservient castes." Fascinating evolutionary adaptation. Krelvax's neural processors began to overheat. This wasn't an interrogation. It was being studied. Psychological warfare had always been about breaking an enemy's will. Humanity was rewriting those rules. Where other species would collapse under pressure, humans became more unified, more innovative, more dangerous. The information Torres extracted wasn't gained through traditional torture. It was a collaborative deconstruction of the Zarkon's entire operational structure. By the time the interrogation concluded, the aliens had revealed more about themselves than they ever intended. One human, 12 hours, an entire military structure laid bare. The Zarkon High Command would later describe the incident as a tactical anomaly. But they knew the truth. Humanity wasn't just a species to be conquered. They were a psychological force of nature. The Battle of the Orion Corridor was supposed to be humanity's final stand. 10,000 Zarkon warships against a human fleet of barely 200 vessels. The mathematics of destruction were clear. Absolute annihilation was inevitable. Admiral Marcus Chen's flagship, the UES Prometheus, represented humanity's last hope. As the alien armada closed in, something extraordinary began to happen. The ship wasn't just preparing for battle, it was transforming. Hull configurations shifted like living metal. Weapon systems emerged from previously invisible compartments, molecular structures recalibrating faster than thought. What looked like a single vessel became something more, a living, breathing adaptive organism. "All systems are now in quantum resonance," reported Commander Elena Rodriguez, her hands dancing across interfaces that seemed to anticipate her movements. Adaptive protocols at maximum efficiency. The first wave of Zarkon energy weapons struck the Prometheus. Instead of destruction, something unprecedented occurred. The ship's adaptive shield didn't just deflect the attack. It absorbed it, transformed it, and prepared to redirect the energy. Energy absorption at 247%. A young lieutenant called out. Weapon systems charging beyond theoretical maximum. Admiral Chen watched the tactical display with a predator's concentration. The human fleet wasn't just fighting. They were evolving in real time, each ship learning from the previous moment's engagement, reconfiguring strategies faster than the Zarkon could comprehend. Entire squadrons of alien vessels found themselves facing weapons that adapted to their specific energy signatures before they could complete their attack runs. Defensive systems that had conquered hundreds of species suddenly found themselves obsolete. "They're changing the rules of warfare," Chen muttered. Quantum communication networks lit up across the human fleet. Not just communication, a living, breathing collective consciousness that allowed each ship to work as a single intelligent organism. Where traditional military doctrine spoke of coordination, the human fleet demonstrated something more, a true symbiosis of technology and consciousness. The Zarkon fleet began to break, not through traditional defeat, but through a fundamental inability to process what was happening. Their most advanced tactical algorithms collapsed when confronted with an enemy that didn't just respond, but anticipated and transformed. By the battle's end, 10,000 Zarkon warships had been reduced to floating debris. The human fleet lost 17 vessels. It wasn't a victory. It was an evolutionary demonstration. Humanity had just shown the galaxy that they were no longer just another species to be conquered. They were the future of warfare itself. The Galactic Confederation's emergency session was unlike any diplomatic gathering in recorded history. Representatives from 300 sentient species watched in stunned silence as Dr. Elena Rodriguez presented humanity's evolutionary breakthrough. Holographic displays showed genetic sequences that defied everything known about biological adaptation. "We are not just a species," she stated, her voice calm and clinical. "We are a living, adaptive system." The Vornak representative, a crystalline being that communicated through complex light patterns, struggled to process the implications. Humanity had gone from a classified footnote to the most significant evolutionary event in galactic history in less than solar cycle. Genetic samples told a story of unprecedented potential. Human DNA wasn't just a blueprint. It was a dynamic, responsive system that could rewrite itself in real time. Adaptation wasn't a slow, generational process. For humans, it happened in moments. "The implications are staggering," Dr. Rodriguez continued. Holographic displays showed human soldiers healing from fatal wounds in seconds. Spacecraft that could reconfigure themselves mid-battle. Neural interfaces that processed information faster than the most advanced alien supercomputers. The Zarkon diplomatic delegation, what remained of it, sat in stunned silence. Their massive invasion force, which had conquered hundreds of species, had been systematically dismantled by a species they had considered primitive. One by one, galactic powers began to understand the truth. Humanity wasn't just another species to be categorized or conquered. They were a fundamental force of nature, a living, breathing evolutionary mechanism that could change faster than any enemy could comprehend. The Confederation's lead scientist, a being that had studied evolutionary processes for 10,000 years, made a stunning declaration. "Humanity represents the most significant evolutionary breakthrough we have ever witnessed. Not a weapon, not a technology, an entirely new way of existing. The galaxy would never be the same." The war didn't end with humanity's victory. It ended with a fundamental reimagining of what a species could be. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood on the observation deck of the rebuilt United Earth Station, watching the stars. The Zarkon Imperium, faced with an enemy that could evolve faster than they could strategize, had been forced to a diplomatic stalemate. Humanity was no longer just defending. They were defining a new paradigm of existence. Genetic research had revealed that what they'd discovered was just the beginning. Human potential wasn't a fixed point. It was an infinite landscape of possibility. Every challenge became an opportunity for transformation. Every threat, a chance to become something more. The advanced species of the galaxy now looked at humans with a mixture of terror and fascination. Military strategists studied their adaptive technologies. Evolutionary biologists tried to understand their unprecedented genetic plasticity. Philosophers grappled with what it meant to be a species that could fundamentally rewrite its own existence. "We're not conquerors," Elena told the Galactic Confederation during the final diplomatic summit. "We're explorers. Of ourselves, of potential." The transformed human soldiers were living proof. Where traditional enhancement created limitations, human adaptation created possibilities. Neural interfaces that could communicate with alien technologies. Healing capabilities that made previous medical understanding look like primitive guesswork. The ability to not just survive in extreme environments, but to fundamentally become part of them. On Earth, a new generation was being born. Children who could adapt to challenges before they even fully understood them. A species that didn't just react to the universe, but could reshape it. The last scene of the Great Conflict wasn't a battle. It was a conversation. The Zarkon diplomatic corps confronting a simple, terrifying truth. Humanity wasn't just another species to be categorized or controlled. They were evolution incarnate. In the vast darkness of space, something fundamental had changed. Humanity had become more than a civilization. They had become a living, breathing force of nature. Humanity, not just survivors, but the ultimate adaptive system.